The ballroom went quiet for half a second. Not completely silent, just that strange kind of hush where laughter hangs in the air too long after a joke that shouldn't have been told. Crystal chandeliers reflected across 500 guests. Champagne glasses clinked. A violinist continued playing like nothing had happened, and my future mother-in-law smiled. She lifted her wine glass, eyes sliding toward my mother seated beside me. "Well," she said loudly enough for 3 tables to hear, "some women become mothers and some just end up raising trash." A few people laughed. Not nervous laughter, real laughter. My fingers froze around my napkin. I remember noticing tiny things, the smell of roasted salmon, the cold air from the ballroom vents, the way my mom straightened her posture like she hadn't heard correctly. Then my fiancé, Daniel, laughed too, not loudly, but enough. Enough that everyone saw, enough that my chest tightened. I told myself they were teasing. Rich families joked differently, I'd learned that over the past year. Sarcasm. Status humor. Social testing. So I smiled. I actually smiled. Because I thought this was one of those moments where reacting would make things worse. My mother looked at me quietly. She didn't speak. She just folded her hands in her lap. And somehow, that hurt more than the insult. The gala was supposed to honor mothers. That's why we were there. Daniel's family hosted it every year, a massive charity event for their foundation. Politicians, hospital donors, local media, business owners, everyone important attended. I already felt out of place walking in. My dress was elegant but simple. My mother wore the only formal gown she owned, navy blue, slightly outdated, carefully pressed. She had been nervous all day. "Are you sure I belong there?" she'd asked that morning. "Yes," I told her. "You belong wherever I am." Now I wondered if I'd been wrong, because after the first comment, more followed. Small ones, sharp ones, delivered with smiles. And what confused me most wasn't my future mother-in-law. It was Daniel. He never stopped it. He never even looked uncomfortable. And deep inside, a quiet question started forming. Why did it feel like everyone else understood something I didn't? Before I keep going, I want to pause for just a second. If you're listening right now, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. And what time is it? I always wonder how far these stories travel, because moments like this, humiliation, family tension, those quiet betrayals seem to happen everywhere. Please subscribe to the channel. Trust me, it helps reach more people like you and is totally free. All right, let me explain how we even got to that ballroom. My name is Alina. I was 29 at the time, working as a senior project coordinator for a healthcare nonprofit. My life before Daniel was stable, not glamorous, not wealthy, but steady. My mom raised me alone. She worked double shifts as a hospital cleaner for most of my childhood. She never complained, never asked for recognition, never pretended to be anything she wasn't. We didn't have much, but we had peace. Daniel entered my life like a completely different universe. We met at a fundraising conference. He was charming in that effortless way wealthy people sometimes are, relaxed confidence, tailored suits, soft humor that made everyone feel included. He asked thoughtful questions. He remembered details. And most importantly, he treated my mother kindly when he first met her. I still remember that dinner. My mom cooked homemade lasagna. She was nervous, apologizing for everything. Daniel smiled warmly. "This is the best meal I've had all month," he told her. She glowed. That mattered to me more than anything. Because dating someone from money scared me. I worried about judgment, about class differences, about invisible rules I didn't understand. But Daniel reassured me constantly. "My family is traditional," he'd say, "but once they know you, they'll love you." And at first, it seemed true. His mother, Victoria Hale, was elegant, composed, socially powerful. She ran charities, chaired hospital boards, appeared in local magazines. When we first met, she hugged me politely. "You're lovely," she said. "Daniel speaks highly of you." Nothing openly hostile, just measured, careful, like she was evaluating an investment. Still, I believed acceptance would come with time. When Daniel proposed 8 months later, I cried, not because of the ring, because I thought my mom's sacrifices had finally led me somewhere safe, somewhere respected. I didn't realize acceptance and tolerance were two very different things. The first uncomfortable moment happened at a brunch 3 months before the gala. Victoria asked my mom what she used to do. Mom answered honestly. "I worked housekeeping at Mercy Hospital." Victoria smiled thinly. "Oh, how practical." The word lingered strangely. Later that day, Daniel told me privately, "Mom just worries about social compatibility. Don't overthink it." I tried not to, but little things kept happening. At family dinners, my mom wasn't included in conversations about travel or investments. Waiters assumed she was staff. Victoria corrected her pronunciation gently but publicly. Each time, Daniel squeezed my hand under the table. "They don't mean anything by it." So I convinced myself it was adjustment. Different backgrounds, different manners, nothing malicious until Mother's Day arrived. The Hale Foundation Gala was overwhelming. 500 guests, live orchestra, press photographers, large screens displaying family achievements. Daniel's parents stood near the stage greeting donors like royalty. My mom whispered, "This is beautiful." I felt proud bringing her. She deserved to see a world that had always excluded her. Dinner began smoothly. Speeches, applause, toasts. Then Victoria approached our table. She placed a hand on my shoulder and leaned toward my mother. "So, Linda," she said, voice sweet but loud, "it must feel remarkable watching your daughter marry into a different lifestyle." My mom smiled politely. "I just want her happy." Victoria laughed softly. "Yes, happiness can mean many things." Guests nearby listened. Daniel checked his phone, didn't intervene. I felt unease crawl up my spine. Victoria, raising a child alone must have been difficult. Mom, it had challenges. Victoria, of course, structure matters so much in forming refinement. Me, Daniel and I are very happy together. Victoria, smiling, "Oh, I'm sure you are." Love overlooks many disparities. Daniel, light chuckle. Mom, Victoria, "What? I'm being honest." My stomach tightened. I told myself again she's joking, but then came the toast. Victoria stood at the microphone. She began a speech honoring mothers, elegant words, poised delivery. The room adored her. Then she shifted. "And tonight," she said, "we celebrate women who build legacies, who elevate future generations." Her gaze moved directly toward our table. "Because motherhood isn't just biology, it's refinement, guidance, culture." Some guests nodded. "And sadly," she added lightly, "not everyone who has children truly becomes a mother." A ripple of laughter. My chest tightened. I heard whispers. Someone glanced at my mom. Then came the line, the one that froze everything. "She's not a mother," Victoria said, raising her glass. "She's trash that got lucky." Laughter erupted, and Daniel laughed. That sound shattered something inside me. Time slowed. I looked at my mom. Her smile didn't disappear. She simply lowered her eyes. That quiet dignity, the same one she had when customers ignored her at restaurants, when people spoke over her, when life dismissed her existence. And suddenly I realized she wasn't surprised. She had expected this. I felt heat behind my eyes. Why didn't I see it sooner? How long had this been building? Was Daniel part of it? The jokes continued at nearby tables. Someone whispered, "That's brutal." Another replied, "Well, class differences." I understood then. This wasn't teasing. It was positioning. They were reminding everyone exactly where my mother, and therefore I ranked. I stood slowly. Daniel leaned toward me. "Sit down," he murmured. "Don't make a scene." I stared at him. "You think I'm the one making a scene?" He sighed. "You're being sensitive." Sensitive. The word echoed louder than the laughter. I turned to my mom. Her hand trembled slightly as she reached for her purse. "I think we should go," she whispered, and something inside me shifted. Calm, cold, clear, I took her hand. We walked through 500 guests. No speech, no confrontation. Just silence. The orchestra kept playing as we left the ballroom. Behind us, laughter resumed. Outside, night air hit my face. My mom apologized. "I didn't mean to cause trouble." That sentence broke me more than anything. She believed she was the problem. I helped her into the car, closed the door. Then I stepped aside and made one phone call. The person answered immediately. I listened for a moment. Then I said quietly, "Do it now." There was a long pause on the other end, and within minutes, everything began to change. Inside that gala ballroom, people who had just laughed at my mother were about to realize they had insulted the wrong woman. Outside the ballroom doors, under gold lantern lights and valet engines humming in the distance, I made the call. And this time the words were simple, not emotional, not loud, just controlled. Do it. Now, I ended the call before the person on the other end could respond, because I already knew they would. And for the first time that night, I wasn't hurt anymore. I was certain. The gala music faded behind closed doors. My mom sat quietly in the passenger seat, hands folded in her lap like she was trying to make herself smaller. She stared straight ahead, streetlights reflected in her eyes. "I shouldn't have come," she said softly. I leaned against the car door. "No," I answered. "You absolutely should have." She shook her head. "They're important people, Alina. I don't fit in that world." The word fit landed heavily. Inside the ballroom, 500 people were still eating dessert, laughing, networking, unaware that the power structure they believed in had already begun collapsing. I checked my phone. No messages yet, but I knew timing mattered. I needed patience. Mom looked at me carefully. "You didn't argue," she said. "I was proud of you for staying calm." I swallowed, because she didn't know calm wasn't surrender, it was preparation. Dialogue sequence, Mom. Daniel didn't mean to laugh, maybe he was uncomfortable. Me, he understood exactly what was happening. Mom, families tease differently. Me, that wasn't teasing. Mom, quietly, I've heard worse in life. Me, you shouldn't have had to hear it from mine. She reached for my hand, and in that moment, something inside me finalized. Not anger, not revenge, protection. They hadn't humiliated me. They humiliated the woman who built my entire life from nothing. And they did it publicly, deliberately. 5 minutes passed, then 10. The gala doors suddenly opened behind us. 2 event coordinators rushed outside, whispering urgently into headsets. Valets stopped chatting. Staff began moving faster. Something had shifted inside. My phone vibrated. Unknown number, I answered. "Yes," a calm male voice replied. "It's done." I nodded once. "Thank you." I hung up. Mom looked confused. "Alina, what's going on?" I smiled slightly. "You're about to see why we never needed their approval." Before I continue, tell me in the comments, have you ever stayed silent while someone crossed a line and later realized silence was actually strength? All right, because what happened next still feels surreal when I replay it. We hadn't even started the car when Daniel called. I let it ring twice, 3 times, then answered. He sounded irritated. "Alina, where did you go? Mom thinks you overreacted." I almost laughed. "Did she?" "Yes, people are asking questions. You embarrassed us by leaving." Embarrassed. That word again. I glanced toward the ballroom entrance where staff were now gathering nervously. "Daniel," I asked calmly, "has anyone checked their phones yet?" A pause. "What do you mean?" "Just wait," he sighed. "I don't have time for games." Then his voice stopped mid-sentence. I heard background noise. Someone speaking urgently near him. Another voice. "Victoria needs to see this, right now." Daniel returned, tone changed. "Alina, what did you do?" I answered quietly. "Nothing. I just asked someone to do their job." Here's something I hadn't shared before. The Hale Foundation, the reason for the gala, didn't actually belong to Daniel's family. Not entirely. The public believed Victoria built it. Magazines credited her vision. Donors admired her leadership. But legally, the foundation existed because of a private endowment established 25 years earlier. An anonymous benefactor. Someone who never appeared publicly. Someone who funded nearly 70% of its operations. Only a handful of people knew who that donor was. And one of them was me. Well, not exactly me. My mother. Growing up, Mom never talked about money. We lived modestly. She worked constantly. Nothing about our life suggested wealth, because she didn't want it to. After my father died when I was 6, she inherited something unexpected, ownership shares in a medical logistics company he co-founded before anyone realized its future value. She sold most of it quietly years later, not for luxury, for purpose. She created an anonymous charitable trust. Her rule was simple, no publicity, no recognition. Help people without ego. That trust funded hospitals, scholarships, and eventually the Hale Foundation. Victoria never knew who the donor truly was. She only knew money arrived every year. Reliable, silent, necessary. Inside the ballroom, every board member received the same message simultaneously. An official legal notice. Subject line, immediate suspension of endowment funding. Attached. Termination authorization financial audit request emergency board review notice authorized by the primary benefactor's legal representative. The same representative I had just called. The same call where I said, "Do it." Now, Daniel, Alina, the foundation account just froze. Me, yes, Daniel, that's hundreds of millions in operational funding. Me, I know, Daniel, Mom is panicking. Sponsors are asking questions. Me, that sounds stressful. Daniel, stop joking, did you know about this? Me, I did. Daniel, how? I let silence answer him, because realization travels faster than explanations. The ballroom doors burst open again. Victoria herself walked outside. Her perfect composure was gone, hair slightly disordered. Phone pressed tightly to her ear. She saw me, stopped. Her expression shifted from irritation to calculation to sudden understanding. She ended her call and approached slowly. My mom instinctively stood, still polite, still respectful, even after everything. Victoria, Alina, we need to talk privately. Me, you can speak here. Victoria, forcing smile, this concerns foundation business. Me, it concerns my mother. Victoria's eyes moved toward Mom. For the first time since meeting her, there was no superiority in her gaze, only uncertainty. You're Linda Hayes? She asked carefully. Mom nodded. Victoria inhaled sharply. The pieces were connecting. Victoria lowered her voice. You never disclosed your connection. My mom looked confused. My connection to what? Victoria turned to me. Alina, is this some misunderstanding? I answered calmly. No misunderstanding. I reached into my purse and handed her a folded document, the trust authorization. Primary donor signature, Linda Hayes. My mother stared at it, her eyes widened. Alina, why do you have this? Because she never managed the financial side herself. She hated paperwork. I had helped coordinate communications with attorneys for years. Quietly, privately, Victoria's hands trembled slightly. You funded the foundation? Mom blinked. Well, yes, but anonymously. That was the agreement. The world tilted in Victoria's eyes. She realized what had just happened. She had publicly insulted the woman keeping her legacy alive. Inside, guests began exiting the ballroom. Phones out, whispers spreading. Sponsors demanding explanations, board members searching for Victoria. Daniel appeared moments later, his face pale. He looked at my mother differently now, not dismissive, not amused, afraid. Daniel. Alina, why didn't you tell us? Me, you never asked who she was, you decided. Daniel, this could destroy the foundation. Me, words can destroy people too. Silence settled. The orchestra stopped playing inside. 500 guests sensed scandal without understanding it yet. And suddenly, the social hierarchy flipped. I watched my mom processing everything. She wasn't angry. She wasn't triumphant. She looked embarrassed. I never wanted attention, she whispered to me. I know. That money was supposed to help people. It still can, I said gently, but not through people who humiliate you. For the first time that night, her shoulders straightened. Not with pride, with dignity reclaimed. I hadn't planned revenge months earlier. But I had noticed patterns. Victoria's subtle insults. Daniel's silence. The way they introduced me as our son's fiancé, but never fully family. I realized they valued status above character. So when the humiliation happened publicly, the response had to be public consequences. Not shouting, not arguing, just truth revealed at the exact moment reputation mattered most. And now they understood. Power wasn't inherited wealth. Power was dependency. And they depended on the woman they called trash. Victoria stepped closer to my mother. Her voice softened dramatically. Linda, I sincerely apologize if anything said tonight was misunderstood. My mom hesitated. I don't think it was misunderstood. Daniel looked between us anxiously. Alina, please, let's fix this privately. I shook my head. It became public when your mother picked up the microphone. Guests nearby pretended not to listen, but everyone listened. Dialogue sequence Victoria, The foundation serves thousands of families. Me. Then it deserves leadership that respects mothers. Victoria, we can issue an apology. Me, you already gave a speech. Daniel, Elena, you're going too far. Me, no. I'm finally standing exactly where you placed us. Victoria's composure cracked. What do you want? The question landed heavily. Because now they were negotiating. I looked at my mom. She squeezed my hand gently. She didn't want revenge. She wanted dignity, so I answered carefully. I want you to treat her the way you treat donors because she is the reason your gala exists. Victoria nodded immediately. Yes, of course. But I wasn't finished. Because one more truth still needed to surface. One truth about Daniel. One truth about why he laughed. And that revelation would change everything about our engagement. When we walked back inside the gala, the energy felt completely different. 30 minutes earlier, I had been invisible. Now conversations stopped as we passed. Whispers followed us. Phones lowered. People weren't looking at Victoria Hale anymore. They were looking at my mother. The orchestra had paused mid-set. Event coordinators moved nervously between tables. Several board members stood near the stage arguing in hushed but urgent voices. My mom squeezed my hand. Elena, I don't want a scene, I answered quietly. There already is one. And then Victoria appeared beside us again. Perfect posture restored, smile back in place. But this time I noticed something I hadn't before. She wasn't embarrassed. She was calculating. Victoria, let's handle this gracefully. Me, Grace left when you picked up the microphone. Victoria, soft laugh, you're emotional, understandable. Mom, maybe we should go home. Victoria, no, Linda. Please stay, you're important to tonight. The pause before important was deliberate, a performance adjustment, not remorse. And that's when I understood something critical. She wasn't sorry. She was managing damage. Daniel joined us moments later. He looked exhausted, like someone watching their world rearrange itself in real time. But instead of apologizing, he pulled me aside. Elena, he whispered urgently, you need to reverse the funding suspension. Not are you okay? Not I'm sorry. Funding. Reputation, control. I felt a strange calm settle over me. Before we talk about that, I said, I want an answer. His jaw tightened. Why did you laugh? He avoided my eyes, and that hesitation told me everything was bigger than one bad moment. We moved near the stage, but people followed subtly. Conversations quieted nearby. Everyone sensed something unfolding. I didn't lower my voice. Me, you knew what your mother was doing. Daniel. You don't understand how these events work. Me, explain it to me. Daniel, Mom tests people, it's social pressure. Me, she humiliated my mother. Daniel, she was seeing how you'd react. Me, and laughing was part of the test. Daniel, frustrated if I defended you publicly, it would signal weakness. Me, weakness. Daniel, our donors expect strength, alignment with family. The words landed slowly, carefully, like pieces of glass settling. I realized then Daniel hadn't frozen. He hadn't been uncomfortable. He had participated. Because in his world, loyalty flowed upward. To status, to power, to family image, not to love. Me. So you let them insult her to prove loyalty? Daniel, it wasn't personal. Me, it was entirely personal. Daniel, you're making this bigger than it is. Me, you laughed at the woman who raised me. He exhaled sharply. And then he said the sentence that ended our future. Daniel, Elena, relationships require adaptation. Eventually you would have needed to distance yourself from certain backgrounds anyway. I stared at him. My chest felt hollow. He expected me to outgrow my mother. At that exact moment, Victoria stepped onto the stage microphone again. She clinked her glass gently. Ladies and gentlemen, she announced smoothly, a brief clarification regarding tonight's administrative misunderstanding. She didn't look at us. She looked at the audience. She was reclaiming control. Victoria, our valued donor has expressed concern about operational direction. Board member, is funding withdrawn? Victoria, temporarily paused while emotions settle. Guest whisper, who is the donor? Victoria, smiling calmly, someone who prefers anonymity. She was rewriting the story, turning humiliation into a misunderstanding, erasing responsibility. My heartbeat slowed. She still believed reputation could outrun truth. I walked toward the stage. My heels echoed louder than the room noise. Mom whispered behind me, "Alina," but I already knew what needed to happen. This humiliation began publicly. The correction had to happen publicly too. I asked quietly, "May I speak?" Victoria's smile tightened. "Alina, this isn't necessary." I met her eyes. "Yes, it is." The audience leaned forward collectively. Curiosity had replaced celebration. I took the microphone. My hands were steady. "I'd like to clarify something," I said calmly. "The donor didn't pause funding because of confusion." Murmurs spread. Victoria stepped closer, whispering through her smile. "Careful," she said under her breath. I continued anyway. The funding was paused because tonight, during a Mother's Day gala, the foundation's leadership publicly called the donor trash. Gasps rippled across the room. Victoria laughed lightly into her mic. "Oh, Alina, emotions are running high." I turned toward Daniel. And Daniel laughed because he believed protecting status mattered more than protecting family. The room went silent. Daniel, "Alina, stop." Me, "You said defending us would show weakness." Daniel, "This isn't appropriate." Me, "Neither was humiliating my mother." Victoria, "You're misrepresenting events." Me, "Am I?" I stepped aside and gestured gently. "Mom, would you come up here?" She hesitated. 500 people watched. Then she walked slowly to the stage. I handed her the microphone. Her hands trembled slightly. "I never wanted recognition," she said softly. "I only wanted to help families." People leaned closer. Board members exchanged shocked looks. I continued, "The Hale Foundation exists because of her endowment." Silence detonated across the ballroom. Phones lifted. Whispers exploded. Victoria's smile finally disappeared. Victoria stepped forward quickly. "Well," she said, voice firm, "if Linda truly is the donor, then we are grateful. But philanthropy requires professionalism. Personal sensitivity cannot dictate institutional stability." There it was. No apology, only justification. Me, "You called her trash." Victoria, "A figure of speech taken out of context." Me, "In front of 500 people." Victoria, "Humor is subjective." Me, "Humiliation isn't humor." Victoria, "Alina, you're young. You don't understand how elite circles function." The audience reacted, subtle discomfort spreading. She doubled down. Victoria, "Successful organizations require hierarchy. Emotional reactions threaten progress." She still believed authority would protect her. She still refused accountability. A senior board member stood. "Victoria," he said carefully, "did you insult the primary benefactor publicly?" She lifted her chin. "I made a light-hearted remark." Another donor spoke. "That remark just froze our funding." Someone else added, "You've endangered the foundation." The room began reassessing everything they had witnessed earlier. Laughter from before now looked cruel. Complicity felt visible. People realized they had laughed at the wrong person. Victoria turned to my mother again. "Linda, surely you understand leadership pressure. You wouldn't punish an entire charity over emotional misunderstanding." Mom looked at her calmly. "I worked cleaning hospital rooms for 30 years, she said gently. "I understand pressure very well." A pause. Then she added, "But I never needed to insult anyone to feel important." The room erupted into soft applause. Not loud, but unanimous. And that was the moment Victoria lost control. Daniel stepped forward desperately. "Alina, we can fix this. We'll issue an apology. We'll restructure leadership." I looked at him quietly. "Would you have defended her if we weren't the donors?" He didn't answer. His silence became the answer. I removed my engagement ring, placed it in his hand. "I don't want a life where love depends on status." His face collapsed, not from heartbreak, but realization. He had misjudged power. I turned to the audience. "The funding isn't gone," I said calmly. "It's being redirected." Gasps again. "To organizations led by people who respect the families they claim to serve." Applause grew stronger. Victoria stood frozen beside the stage. For the first time all night, she had nothing to say. We left the gala again. But this time, no one laughed. People moved aside respectfully. Several guests thanked my mother quietly as we passed. Outside, night air felt lighter. Mom exhaled deeply. "I never wanted revenge," I smiled. "It wasn't revenge." It was truth, she said, and truth had changed everything. 6 months passed. The Hale Foundation underwent leadership restructuring after multiple board resignations. Victoria stepped down publicly citing personal reasons. Daniel sent messages for weeks. Apologies, explanations, promises. I never responded. Instead, my mom and I helped launch a new healthcare outreach program, one that never displayed donor names. No galas, no speeches, just work. Peace returned quietly. One evening, we sat on her porch drinking tea. No chandeliers, no cameras, just crickets and warm air. Mom smiled softly. "You know," she said, "I used to worry people would look down on us." I leaned back in my chair. "They only look down when they stand on something fragile." She laughed. And for the first time since that night, the memory didn't hurt. It felt finished. I didn't win because they lost. I won because I finally understood. Respect isn't granted by powerful families. It's protected by the people who refuse to abandon where they came from. Now I want to ask you something honestly. Who was really wrong that night? Should I have forgiven Daniel and his mother after the apology attempts? And if someone insulted your parent publicly, would you walk away quietly or expose the truth like I did? Tell me what you would have done. I read every comment, and your perspective might be completely different from mine. Subscribe for more. Thanks for watching.